Guys, I just wanted to talk about some NIL rankings, programs with the most powerful boosters. Now, this rankings list, of course, has Texas A&M number 1, Texas number 2, Tennessee number 3, Georgia number 4, Notre Dame number 5, Ohio State 6. So I guess this is just a list of the most powerful boosters. Now, if I was doing a list, mine would be a little bit different. I think there's two different factors when you're talking about NIL boosters. You know, number one, I would say the team that has the ability to spend the most money is Texas University. But I don't think anyone can debate the infrastructure, the overall NIL ability that Texas A&M has put together. They've done it the best out of anyone when it comes to NIL deals, when it comes to approaching these kids, when it comes to offering them contracts. So yeah, when it comes to like NIL rankings, which teams do it, I would probably say Texas A&M number 1, Texas number 2, and then Tennessee maybe number 3 because of the situation with the quarterback. We'll have to see with Carnell Tate, the 5-star receiver who's deciding right now between Tennessee and Ohio State. If Tennessee gets him, that's 100% NIL. You have to factor that in as well. Georgia is a very interesting team. So back in like 2018, 2019, if you asked me my opinion on one football team I was sure that just completely paid players and completely cheated, I would say Georgia. But when it comes to the NIL, we haven't heard as much about Georgia offering kids money like A&M, like Texas, like Tennessee. A lot of it is very tough because Georgia has a built-in advantage. Their state is one of the most talent-rich states in the country. So when it comes to them, like half of their recruiting class is going to be from the state of Georgia. And when a 5-star player from the state of Georgia commits to Georgia, you don't immediately think, oh, NIL was involved. You think, well, he's from Georgia. He just wants to stay home. So it's a little bit tougher, but I'm sure Georgia is using the NIL. They're just doing a better job at keeping it on the down low. They're not using it like Texas A&M is. Texas A&M, it's impossible to hide. You know, with the way they recruited and the way they operated in 2022. Tennessee, same thing. Tennessee, you're going to sign a 5-star, top 5 quarterback in the entire nation with your lack of success recently, really? The $8 million NIL deal already came out about that. But Georgia, I'm sure, is. Notre Dame, I'm sure Notre Dame has powerful boosters, but they are not one of the top NIL deals. That's not how they operate. Same thing with Ohio State, so those teams would be way down on my list. Oregon, yes, Oregon is very interesting. Oregon would probably be at least top 7 or top 8 on my list when it comes to most powerful NIL programs. Michigan, no chance. Alabama is interesting. So Alabama is quite active with their booster activity in the transfer portal. Not so much right now in terms of actual high school recruits with NIL when it comes to paying the kids directly to go to Alabama. I do wonder if that ends up changing due to the NCAA's lack of enforcement for many of these rules, although we did just see Nick Saban kind of call out Jimbo Fisher, so I don't really know. Right now, Alabama's really not in that kind of NIL game in terms of, again, guys, when I'm talking about like NIL booster recruiting, I'm talking about something that is technically illegal, but the NCAA is just not policing it. All of these programs are going to give players NIL opportunities when the kids get to the schools. The problem is which programs will go around the rules and offer kids NIL deals just to come to the school. That's what we're talking about, and that's what A&M does. That's what Tennessee does. That's what Texas does. Georgia, it's iffy, but I'm sure they do it. They're just good at hiding it. Notre Dame doesn't do that. Ohio State doesn't do that. Oregon does do that. Oregon's going to be very interesting. The other team I would say that would definitely be inside my top 5, Miami. It's going to, and same thing with Florida. I don't know how you have Florida all the way down at number 14. I would also have LSU up a little bit higher. But the Brian Kelly and LSU, I never understood the fit. I think it's a horrible fit. It's like, what is that, oil and water? It just does not fit. Brian Kelly on LSU doesn't fit. They got the wrong guy. I think Brian Kelly doesn't last 3 years at LSU. LSU wants to run a dirty program. And it's like Brian Kelly is not, and listen, I'm not saying like, oh, they're a dirty program. There's a lot of schools like LSU. I'm not saying LSU is this dirty program, but they run their program a little bit more dirty. And in the day and age with NIL, I don't think Brian Kelly is the correct fit for LSU, personally. The other boosters, Auburn, I would say no. Auburn is very, very ineffective on the recruiting trail. Penn State, Penn State did very well in 2021 in terms of getting 3 really good elite talents. I guess this is just like the overall, if you were to ask me right now, if everyone had the same set of rules and you could go balls to the wall and every booster went balls to the wall, I think nobody has more buying power than Texas. I would probably put Texas A&M at number 2. I would probably put Ohio State at number 3. I would probably put Notre Dame at number 4 and Georgia at number 5. But some of those schools don't operate that way. So in terms of who are the most potent schools with the NIL, by the way, an interesting program that's not on this list that I would 100% put on this list, Louisville. Very interesting stuff happening with Louisville. Watch out for Louisville with the NIL. They're offering kids money. There's a lot of rumors about it right now. Louisville could be a team to watch. They could get in on some 5 stars. And you know what? You want to talk about parity. There's your parity right there. Louisville with the use of NIL getting in on it. That would be funny. But yeah, guys, when it comes to the teams with the best NIL, it's got to be Texas A&M number 1. I would say at this point, Texas, maybe 10. I mean, Texas, I know Texas offered Arch Manning a $15 million NIL deal. I'll just say that right now. Maybe Jackson State. No, I'm kidding. Jackson State. See, the thing is with Jackson State, they didn't even give Travis Hunter the money. Travis Hunter got the money from Barstool. That's a little bit different, but I would say Texas A&M number 1, maybe Texas number 2. You've got to throw Oregon up there. You've got to throw Florida up there. And then also Miami. Miami is going to be huge with the NIL. I've been saying it for a while now. So it's, again, there's 2 different factors to talk about. It's like, yes, there's programs like Ohio State has a lot of money, but they're not willing to spend it like that. You know, Alabama has a lot of money, but they're not willing to spend it like that. And I know people are going to say, well, Nick Saban paid for players. The problem is we're talking about 2 different eras. I was one of the first people to say Nick Saban blatantly cheated when he owned a car dealership and he gave kids, new luxury cars, 16-year-old kids. He would do that back in 2016, 2017, 2015, whenever. But now that it's NIL, there's really just 2 different sides of the table, the way these schools are operating. You've got the Texas A&Ms, you've got the Texas and the Tennessees, kind of those low-hanging fruit schools, the schools that really haven't had a ton of success, but they realize if they can weaponize the NIL format, they can now compete and recruit against and win against schools like Alabama, Ohio State. I mean, Texas A&M had a better recruiting class than Alabama in 2022 because of their use and their weaponization of NIL. Like Tennessee is another school. Not much success recently. What do you sell? You've got money. You've got money. You can give these kids money. You can say, listen, tell a 5-star quarterback, we will pay you an $8 million NIL deal. These other schools aren't offering that. So come here. We're going to give you guaranteed money if you come here. That's what they're offering. So that's just an interesting food for thought thing. Another thing we've got, Texas star receiver Xavier Worthy was offered a 6-figure NIL deal from an unnamed Power 5 school, but declined. and will stay at Texas. So this is one of those situations. I'm guessing Xavier Worthy probably was hoping for an offer from one of these schools, and then Texas boosters probably gave him a better deal. I'm guessing Xavier Worthy is making 7 figures. If Xavier Worthy is getting offered 6 figures to transfer, however much that may be, it could be 100K, it could be 900K, it's probably like 500K or something like that. The Texas boosters probably had to boost up, an NIL deal to get him to stay. So I'm guessing Xavier Worthy is making a massive NIL deal with Texas. This was a kid that actually, Xavier Worthy originally was going to go to Michigan and then had some sort of academic issue. That whole story is really interesting. But yeah, he was supposed to go to Michigan, and now he is going into, I believe, his sophomore year. He had a great true freshman season. He's going into his sophomore year. And then another thing I want to talk about, USC with the addition of Jordan Addison. Looking at their schedule, it is very favorable for Lincoln Riley. I would say you only have one game you're for sure an underdog in, and that's October 15th at Utah. And even in a game like that, where it's tough, it's on the road, it's probably going to be at night, you will have the talent advantage. So I could see USC very easily only losing one game. That last game of the regular season against Notre Dame, that could be a program-changing win for USC. It'll be interesting to see what Notre Dame does after their Week 1 loss to Ohio State. I'm expecting Ohio State to beat Notre Dame Week 1, maybe like 51-24 or something like that. It's going to get real bad, and I like Notre Dame, but Ohio State, they're a train. You can't get in their way. You get in their way, you're going to get run over this year. Ohio State, best offense in college football. But yeah, USC, I could see USC making a New Year's Six game. Just looking at the schedule, I mean, your road games at Stanford, extremely winnable. At Oregon State, extremely winnable. At Utah, that's the tough game. At Arizona, very winnable. You get Colorado at home. At UCLA, UCLA with the Rose Bowl, they don't get a lot of fans, unfortunately. And then that huge non-conference Notre Dame game, you go into that Notre Dame game with one loss and you win that game, you could maybe be looking at the playoff for USC. It'll be interesting to see how Caleb Williams develops, but this is why people were saying, everyone's like, well, it's still USC, even though they got Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley is going to get them elite offensive talent they haven't seen in a while, and the Pac-12 is just so ridiculously wide open. This is why people were hyping up the Lincoln Riley move to USC so much. And then there's this. I thought this was disrespectful, guys. Come on. No. You're disrespecting CJ Stroud and JSN here. This is not a question. There's not a question. CJ Stroud, I put the over-under at touchdown passes this year for CJ Stroud at 59.5. I'm taking the over. And then JSN, you're probably looking at about 1,800 receiving yards this year, I would say. But guys, just wanted to talk about overall NIL rankings. Again, right now you're talking about the top schools. The Texas A&M, they've got the best structure in place. Texas is going to be big. They've offered Arch Manning a crazy deal. Not like he needs it, but they've offered it. And then you've got teams that are kind of on the come up right now, like the Miamis, like the Florida. You've got some sleeper teams like Oregon, like Louisville, Michigan State. I've heard some things about Michigan State getting involved a little bit with the NIL. It's very interesting, guys. It'll be interesting to see what these teams are actually willing to do. That's why it was so huge that Texas A&M didn't get any consequences. That gives the full go-ahead for all of these boosters from these different programs to really ramp up their NIL booster cheating when it comes to this, because Texas A&M doesn't face any repercussions. All these other boosters at Florida, at Tennessee, at Texas, at whatever school you want to pick, Louisville, these teams are going to get desperate. They're going to say, listen, you're not going to get punished for doing this. You are not going to get punished for offering kids money just to come to the school. So why shouldn't Louisville land a few top 100 players if they're going to play like that, So it is interesting, and we'll see what happens with some of these NIL recruitments. There's several 5-star recruits I can already tell. I can already see through their recruitments. These kids are going to be involved in some significant NIL, deals with certain programs for 2023 specifically. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger.